Welcome everybody to the Surfrider Ventura chapter meeting for October. Wow, time's just flying by. I wanted to start tonight's meeting again by acknowledging that the Surfrider Ventura County chapter operates on Venturino Chumash land. The first peoples of Ventura County for over 13,000 years are the Chumash people. This is their homeland for thousands of years, their homeland today, and their homeland into the future. They are here, they love Mother Earth, and we want to honor them. Without further ado, let me turn it over to Surfrider Ventura Executive Committee member Danielle Rose for some chapter updates. Take it away, Danielle.
All right, thank you, Bill, for that important reminder. I'm excited to see everyone's faces here on Zoom. I can't believe that it's already the 7th month of being in this virtual environment. I wish that we were cheersing our reusable cups in person and celebrating our chapter's accomplishments together, but it's great that we're still able to convene and inspire each other and learn about research going on in our community. Tonight we have an amazing presenter, Michaela Miller, and she's with the California Ocean Protection Council, and she's here to talk about trends in marine debris and microplastic accumulation here on our Channel Islands, as well as the marine debris removal projects on Santa Rosa and Santa Cruz Islands. So I know she'll leave you inspired to reduce your single-use plastic consumption at home and keep up your solo cleanups until we're able to meet again. So the best way to stay up to date with our chapter is to subscribe to our monthly newsletter. You can do so on our website, ventura.surfrider.org. Thank you to Greg Moore for this month's edition. It went out on Sunday afternoon, highlighting our accomplishments for Coastal Cleanup Month and our new volunteer opportunities. So thank you so much for putting that work, all of that together for us. Again, if you're not on our email list, you can also go and view previous month's editions on our website. We'd like to start off by highlighting the important work that CAUSE is doing in our community. For those of you not familiar, CAUSE stands for the Central Coast Alliance United for a Sustainable Economy. They are committed to advocating for social, economic, and environmental justice along the Central Coast, so here in Ventura and Santa Barbara County. In Oxnard, they've worked towards the Ormond Beach Restoration Plan and advocate for local government to seriously consider all of the environmental impacts of development and expansion projects with the port. And they work with various state agencies to implement environmental justice policies. I really encourage you to check out their website. You can search by city and see a comprehensive list of all that they have done throughout the county. They focus on immigrant rights, farm worker rights, and voting rights, and have had a huge push in recent months in order to get out the vote. They invest in our youth and really inspire future change makers. So if their mission speaks to you and their work is something that you're passionate about, I encourage you to reach out to Lucia Marquez, and their contact information is in our newsletter. So last month was Coastal Cleanup Month. It was kind of a workaround for our COVID-19 situation right now, but it was actually really great that it was a whole month instead of just the 3rd Saturday of the month. In Ormond, we had volunteers come out over the course of 3 weekends, and they removed 3,350 pounds. It was absolutely incredible to see what just a couple of helping hands could do over the course of a few hours. I had the privilege of attending one of the Saturdays, and we partnered with Friends of Ormond Beach. Stephen Gamma was there, Kirby Subaru, Paddle Out Plastic, Ventura County Watershed Protection District, the Nature Conservancy, Sea Shepherd, Conservation Society, and the Sierra Club. So thank you so much to everybody that came out and showed your support. We found so many single-use plastic items, styrofoam, furniture that was legally dumped at the end of Perkins Road, which was very frustrating. But I'd like to pull up on my computer, see if I can share my screen really quickly. Can you see my screen there? No? All right.
Not yet. Oh, it's
my
starting.
messy desktop. Now can you see it?
Yeah.
All right. Pull up. So here's a large quantity of styrofoam. You can see here in the canal. Here is one of the Saturday's bags of trash, the furniture. When I was there, we found a hoverboard, tons of bike parts. It's just really interesting to see what you stumble upon out there. And then here are some of our incredible volunteers with the end of day success. So if I get back to my main screen, give me a moment here. All right. So thank you to everybody that came out. Stay tuned on our Instagram page for upcoming Ormond announcements. We also have an awesome video. Tune into our YouTube video library to see all of the work that was going out at Ormond over the past month. We also had solo cleanups happening using the Ocean Conservancy's Clean Swell app. Thank you to the 23 volunteers who came out and logged their trash data. It's a super intuitive app. If you haven't used it, you can have somebody walk alongside you and you just tap the trash items. It keeps a log for you. And then if you use the group name Surfrider Ventura, we're able to easily query the database to see our group's impact. So continue doing that. If you can, use the name Surfrider Ventura. And over the next month, we'll be partnering with Love, Beauty, and Planet for their Small Acts for Clean Shores campaign, which is more solo cleanups, trying to clean up our watershed before the trash ends up in our oceans, as we'll learn about this evening with Michaela's presentation. If you can't download the app, you can still send in data cards. On our website, we have a blog back from May when we started our solo cleanup program. Thank you to everyone who participated. We also have Hold On to Your Butt updates. On September 21st, Julie gave a wonderful presentation to the Port Hueneme City Council that was very favorably received. Thank you to Julie for your work on expanding this program. We also have a new ash can sponsor, and it's the first one in Port Hueneme. We have State Farm agent Tony Suleiman, so thank you to Tony for his donation. We are trying to look for volunteers in Port Hueneme and more volunteers in Ventura. So if you're interested, please email Julie. We need all the helping hands that we can get. Our Blue Water Task Force is about to kick off for the rainy season here in November through March. If you have availability on Thursday mornings from 8 a.m. until noon, then we would love for you to get involved. It's a perfect excuse to go outside and be a citizen scientist and contribute to this important filling in the gaps in the county's ocean water quality testing program. We pick up and monitor 5 popular surf spots that the county drops off in winter months, and we'd like to stay on top of this data collection and know what is in our storm runoff. So reach out to our Blue Water Task Force team at BWTF, at ventura.surfrider.org if you're interested, and there will be an upcoming volunteer training. We also have updates on our plastic-free Ventura campaign. The expanded polystyrene ban is going for a first vote in front of the Ventura City Council on October 19th. We have a sneak peek of the video that we intend on sharing at the City Council meeting in our newsletter. If you'd like to show your support, you can attend the virtual meeting, or you can also send in a photo of you holding a sign that says "Vote Yes to Ban EPS," and we'll make sure to include it. You can also reach out to your City Council members from the comfort of your own home and sign our action alert. There's a link to that in our newsletter as well. If you are a restaurant owner or know somebody that owns a restaurant, please let us know if they would be in support of the EPS ban, and we have a separate form that they can fill out in order to show City Council as well. If you are trying to tune in and figure out what's going on throughout our state, Surfrider California has a weekly podcast. It's a super easy and efficient way to figure out what's going on in California. And you can listen to it while you're drinking your morning cup of joe on your commute to work. And make sure to sign up for our Amazon Smile program. It's super easy. You just go to smile.amazon.com And to date, over $31,000 have been donated to Surfrider through this program. It's just something you have to remember to do when you go to make that quick Amazon purchase, and it goes right back to the Surfrider Foundation. So would Brian like to give us an update on the Mondo stairs?
Well, thank you for letting me crash the meeting order. I just wanted to give you an update. Been working on it for about the last 8 months. I say we, and that is Beacon. And I spoke, oh gosh, about 8 months, 10 months ago at one of the Surfrider meetings when we were live and in person, and just to let you know this process was starting. We're coming down the home stretch. I just wanted to let you know we're hosting a stakeholder briefing on a remote basis, obviously, through Zoom on Thursday, October 22nd at 6 p.m. The purpose of the meeting is to review preliminary designs for an access stairway on Mondos. And so we've got a couple designs we want some input on. This is a draft. It's not finalized, but we've had engineering, Jensen Design and Survey was awarded the contract. We were funded, we again being Beacon, funded through when the seawall up at Sea Cliff was being reconfigured, and it was about $60,000 a mitigation fee put out to work on access in the area. And we decided the stairway at Mondos was probably the best thing to spend the money on. $60,000 sounds like an awful lot of money, but it doesn't go far when you're talking about construction and engineering on the ocean. But that being said, this is just design. It's not for anything. We don't have funding for anything else, but we do want to make sure that we're getting input from all aspects of the community, from both obviously surfers, stand-up surfers, you know, stand-up paddle, everybody. I know when we had a public meeting out there, there was some group, I don't know if it's the Channel Island Paddlers Association. There's a number of different groups, but I'll go ahead and forward the information to Paul, and we can get it either the Zoom meeting where you can engage and be involved and look at the design and give your input. One thing I did want to add on is we're fortunate that Caltrans is doing a lot of improvements in that area from Emma Wood up to oil piers. A lot of it is for bike pedestrian, putting grates over some of the drainage, but also clean up on the shoulders, doing some restriping, trying to make Mondos, and also where we can, because there's very limited access that we have property, I say property, the county and the state, but the railroad has a fair bit of that parking where everybody parks on Mondos now. But we have a crosswalk that Caltrans has said they will put in as close as possible, with the line of sights and everything being what they need to be to the stairway that we come up with. So just want to pass that on. Appreciate the opportunity to give the input, and want to make sure we have some, would love to have Surfrider's input in that regard with the meeting on the 22nd. Thank you. Questions, I'm happy to answer if there are any.
Yeah, does anybody have any questions at this point?
Can you say the date again? I'm sorry.
Yeah, Cassie, it's October 22nd at 6 p.m.
Thank you.
And we'll get that info out tomorrow. I just completed this whole write-up, and we'll do the Zoom tomorrow, and then the invite, and I'll send it over to Paul and get it, and you guys can get it posted. That would be great. Thank you again.
Great, thank you so much for the updates. Well, then I'd like to formally introduce Michaela Miller. She joined the Ocean Protection Council in February 2020 as their Climate Change Sea Grant Fellow. She supports them in their efforts on sea level rise, ocean acidification, and other statewide climate change related impacts. She has a BS in Environmental Science from CSU-CI and an MS in Applied Marine and Watershed Science from CSU Monterey Bay. Her research focused on assessing major trends in marine debris and microplastic accumulation on the Northern Channel Islands. And prior to joining the Ocean Protection Council, she worked for the Santa Rosa Island Research Station, where she managed their marine debris monitoring and removal project on Santa Rosa and Santa Cruz Islands, which is a joint partnership between the Channel Islands and CSU-CI. She's been studying and working to remove marine debris from the Channel Islands since 2015, so she is extremely knowledgeable on the subject, and we are very fortunate to have her here tonight to talk about the data that she's collected and her research. So thank you, Michaela.
Cool. Thank you guys for having me. Let me try to share my screen really quick. Okay, can you see it?
Yep.
Yes.
Sweet. Alrighty. Okay. So hi everybody. Thank you again for having me today. I'm gonna hope that my dogs don't bark, but they probably will. Just a little heads up. So yeah, like you mentioned, today I'm going to talk about trends in marine debris and microplastics on the Northern Channel Islands. This presentation is basically about my graduate research and also about the Santa Rosa Island Research Station's marine debris and monitoring project that I used to manage. So it's kind of a combination of those two things. So just an outline really quick about what I'm going to go over today. So today I'm going to kind of give a brief impact of marine debris on island shorelines. I know you guys know what marine debris is already, so I'm not going to go into too much detail about that. And then how it impacts the island specifically. And then I'm going to talk about maybe like some potential debris sources within the Santa Barbara Channel and why this area is an important place to study marine debris. And then after that, I'm going to talk about the Santa Rosa Island Research Station's project, some of our survey methods, and then the results and lessons learned from this project. So just as you guys all know, marine debris is a global pollution problem, impacts human health and safety, wildlife, and aquatic environments, and it's also very expensive to remove. So there's also like physical, chemical, and socioeconomic impacts all associated with marine debris being on shorelines and beaches. And if you think about it in the context of remote islands, this is, it's a little bit different. So usually on remote islands, biodiversity is high, logistics are pretty challenging, and debris is known to accumulate there. And the Channel Islands are no exception to this. So as you guys may know, there are large quantities of marine debris that accumulate on island shorelines. And understanding local debris types and potential sources through monitoring efforts, it can kind of help to understand the issue on a regional scale, which to me makes the problem of marine debris a little bit less scary and overwhelming. So just a quick overview, this is the Channel Islands National Park and National Marine Sanctuary. So it's made up of these 5 islands in Santa Barbara down here in the corner. So these islands, as you guys know, are federally protected. They're home to numerous cultural and natural resources. And the sandy beaches on these islands are critically important habitat, and that's kind of what I want to emphasize with this slide. So they provide food resources for the endemic island fox. They provide habitat for pinnipeds to haul out and rest. There's not room for them to do that on the mainland, so they utilize island beaches pretty frequently. And also the sandy beaches of the islands are home to nesting ground birds like snowy plovers, which are endangered. So it's all really important habitat. Also, the Santa Barbara Channel is actually a really interesting place to study marine debris. So just the geographic location being at the beginning of the Southern California Bight, the Santa Barbara Channel is known as a transition zone between 2 major current systems. So you have like cold, nutrient-dense water coming down from the north, and then it mixes with this warm water that comes up from Baja. And this causes, unique circulation patterns, seasonal upwelling, and that results in high biodiversity, which lends to many commercial fisheries. So that, coupled with just the unique geographic placement of where the Channel Islands are in the Santa Barbara Channel, it makes it a really interesting place to study marine debris. So the islands act as like a kind of like a catcher's mitt for debris, just from different current systems and weather patterns. And so that kind of allows for large amounts of debris to accumulate on these shorelines. And then, so if you think about that and then coupled with some anthropogenic factors, there's many debris sources within the Santa Barbara Channel. So you have highly populated mainland coasts. We're really close to LA, one of the biggest cities. You have different harbors and watersheds and rivers that discharge right into the channel. And then, like I mentioned earlier, there's lots of commercial fisheries, recreational fisheries, as well as tourism, commercial shipping lanes, and even some oil and gas exploration in the channel. And so all of these factors can kind of are potential sources for marine debris to enter the channel and wind up on the islands. And so if you put all those factors together, so the oceanographic conditions of this area and the geographic location of the islands, and then coupled with all these potential sources, this is what you get. So this is Sandy Point on the northwest corner of Santa Rosa Island. This isn't a beach that's frequented much by people that go to the island just because it's so far. But this is kind of what you're seeing. This is a photo from the very beginning of this project, and you see elephant seals are just hanging out in trash. And so we kind of wanted to figure out, like, where is this trash coming from, how much of it is out there, and what are the major types, and how is it affecting the islands. So that's just kind of an overview of how this project started. And so yeah, this project I'm going to talk about is called Cultivating Santa Barbara Channel Stewards. So like you mentioned earlier, it's jointly ran, it's managed by CSU Channel Islands Santa Rosa Island Research Station, and is also jointly run by Channel Islands National Park. And so this is basically just a marine debris removal and monitoring project on the islands and also on the mainland. It's still ongoing, and it is funded by the NOAA Marine Debris Program. And so I like to think of the objectives for this project as there being like 3 main objectives. The first one is just pretty simple, just removal. So just to remove as much debris as possible from mainland and Channel Islands beaches. The second one, which I think is a little bit more important, is monitoring. So the objective is to collect, catalog information on the amounts, types, sources, and historical changes in shoreline debris and microplastic types on the mainland and Channel Islands beaches. And then another component of this project is outreach. So the goal is to kind of create a community of Santa Barbara Channel stewards, which includes all of you guys, across socioeconomic groups, age levels, and organizations, both through science and outreach, and also arts, marine debris art. So with that, we developed some monitoring sites. So we have 7 sites on the island, and we have 2 on the mainland in Oxnard. These sites were selected based on, there's an associated historical database on these 4 Santa Rosa Island sites. So the Park Service did a marine debris survey in the 80s at these sites, and so we can compare our data to those historical surveys and kind of see what has changed over the past 30 years or so, which has been kind of interesting. The sites were also chosen based on relative ease of access, sandy beach habitat, and then large amounts of marine debris accumulating. They also have different, they represent different exposures, so they have different aspects. And then the 2 sites in Oxnard Shores and then Ormond Beach, they're mainly used as like a comparison, so we can compare island and mainland debris types. And then we also use those as an outreach tool. So it's harder to bring students to the islands, but it's easy to get them to the mainland sites. So, so that's what those were used for pretty much. I also just want to kind of touch on some of the challenges that are associated with working on the islands. So given the nature of the Channel Islands and how challenging logistics could be, sometimes it's hard to survey each season consistently. So the logistics required a lot of planning that may change at any moment due to weather or other factors. I personally don't like to go out when it looks like this, but sometimes they do. I know we have some Island Packers employees on right now, and they can attest to that. Also, multiple partners and people are involved to make sure that these removal efforts happen. So we rely pretty heavily on the Park Service. Here they are lifting some trash onto their boat via crane. And we also use their truck sometimes. And then we rely heavily on Island Packers. They also transport a lot of the debris back to the mainland for us. And so, yeah, so once you get to the island, it's still a little challenging to survey these remote beaches. We have to think about road closures and sensitive habitats, and all of that makes removal efforts pretty labor intensive. And so those factors kind of limit the number of beaches that we can consistently monitor. And it also meant that we can't remove as much debris as we want to, because we literally have to hike it out on our backs. So with that in mind, we created, these are our survey methods. So we kind of created a modified survey protocol in order to like take those factors into consideration. So we modified the NOAA Marine Debris Program's shoreline survey. And since usually we would remove marine debris from the entire beach, that's what the NOAA program does. But since we're kind of limited with logistics, we created these 3 transects that we survey seasonally, or each time. So the beaches are surveyed seasonally, and the data I'm going to talk about is starting in fall of 2016 and ending summer of 2019. And we return to these same transects each season, and then remove the debris from those transects, take it back to the lab, and then count it and categorize it. And then we also remove sand from each beach to look at microplastics. So once the debris is removed from the island, we count, weigh, and categorize each item based on these categories. So these categories were created based off of the NOAA Marine Debris Program's database, and also the Channel Islands National Park database that I mentioned earlier. So that way our data can be directly comparable with those two larger databases. So it's pretty straightforward. So we have, non-plastics, fishing gear, which is anything fishing related. And then the one thing I just want to point out is that there's 3 types of plastic, since plastic is everywhere. Miscellaneous plastic, which is like any foam or just, small piece of plastic. You don't really know what it originated from. We have personal effects, which is balloons or sunglasses or anything that's used by a person directly. And then plastic packaging, which is, your beverage bottles, stuff like that. And then I just want to talk about microplastics really quickly. So we also looked at the amount of microplastics present in the sediment at each beach. And so to do this, we removed sediment samples from each beach, from the swash zone and then from the strand zone a little higher up on the beach. And basically to do that, we took a scoop of sand and then did this density separation method back in the lab, where we can then count and examine the number of particles or fibers that are present per 100 milliliters of sand. And then after both of those are done, so from there we can kind of use this information to estimate both the macro debris density and the microplastic density of trash found at each beach per season. And so there's kind of 2 metrics for estimating macro debris, which is kind of important to note. So there is item density, which is the number of items per meter square. And then there's also the weight density, which is the weight of items per meter square. And it's just important to note this because some beaches will have like a really high amount of tiny plastic pieces, but they'll weigh less than a pound. But then you'll have other beaches like this photo on the left that has just a bunch of lobster traps where there's maybe like less than 10 of them, but it weighs a lot. And then kind of the same idea for microplastics. So the number of fibers or particles per 100 milliliters of sand. All right, and so this is kind of a crazy graph. Can you guys see my cursor on the screen? Maybe?
Yes.
Okay, awesome, thanks. So that's helpful. So this shows just the spatial variation and the temporal variation in marine debris item density for each beach. So here the x-axis represents the season surveyed, and so it's starting in fall of 2016, ending in summer of 2019. And the y-axis is again the density, so this is the number of items found per square meter, and then each bar is a season. And so this was to kind of see like, okay, which beaches have the most trash? Is there any consistent spatial patterns, like in terms of certain sites that have the most? And then also, are there any seasonal trends? Like, do certain seasons present the most trash each time? And we found that there are no like real specific seasonal trends. It kind of varies. One thing that was interesting in terms of the number of items is that Sandy Point, this one over here, it started out really, really high, and then it tapered off as we consistently surveyed, and it was pretty even the rest of the time, which shows that like that's a steady accumulation rate of the trash that washes up there consistently. And before we'd surveyed, there had been like hadn't been removed in a while, so it had just been accumulating for who knows how long. Other beaches have a lot of variability, so no real patterns there. And then some beaches like Forney's on the west end, consistently really small amounts of item density. And then this is sauces, is pretty high as well. And so that was interesting, just kind of showing, just the variation in the amount of items that we found per season. And then here's the same graph showing the weight density instead of the item density. So again, the weight density is just the weight of the items removed per meter square. And as you can see, beaches with relatively high item densities have very low weight density. So it's the sauces again, the same beach that had pretty high item densities, now it's like barely anything. And that's because all these beaches are characterized by like small, tiny pieces of foam. Same with Skunk Point over here. But the Northwest Santa Rosa Island sites, these 3 over here, they had consistently the highest amounts of weight in comparison to the other sites. So just another way of looking at kind of the same thing. And then, so here's another way of looking at the data, and this shows the composition of marine debris by site, again, by item density here on the left, and then weight density here on the right. So the thing to look at here is, so each color represents a different category of debris found. So like the categories that I mentioned earlier, we divided it, the composition of each beach, basically. So each bar represents a different beach. And as you can see, this isn't really a surprise to me or anyone, but the most, in terms of item density, the highest number of items found was miscellaneous plastic. So your foam, fragments, stuff like that. But the interesting thing is on the right-hand side, so in terms of weight, the category that comprised the most weight of debris removed was fishing gear, which is this blue color. And so the mainland, there's like hardly any, and same with Santa Cruz, but Santa Rosa is when you start to see like really significant amounts of, significant weights of marine debris from the fishing gear category. Another question that came up is in our research was the relationship between macro debris and microplastics. So we hypothesized that areas with consistently high densities of macro debris, like the large debris, it will also have high densities of microplastics, since its plastics are known to kind of break down and degrade into the sediment and stuff. So we would assume that areas with high amounts of marine debris in general would have high amounts of microplastic. But it turns out that is not the case, and there's not necessarily an inverse relationship, but basically beaches with high amounts of macro debris have lower microplastic densities, and then the beaches with really, really high microplastic densities had not that much marine debris as a whole. So that was just kind of an interesting thing that we found. And so since fishing gear, lost fishing gear was such a large component of the weight of marine debris that we removed, we then wanted to look into fishing efforts of pretty gear-intensive fisheries. So locally, the most gear-intensive fishery is the commercial spiny lobster fishery. It's also the most, one of the most economically viable fisheries in this area, besides like urchin and big squid, but uses the most gear. So this map I made, it just shows basically where high lobster fishing efforts took place in the Santa Barbara Channel. So as you can see, and it's denoted by the red color, so these red cells just show a lot of pounds of lobster removed. This is pretty not that high of resolution, so I don't like to say like, oh, it's definitive, but it's just to kind of like show my point. But these three sites over here where most of the fishing debris was found are also in these two areas that are heavily fished for lobster. And I'm sure, I don't have data on this, but I know over here as well, there's also on the east end of Santa Cruz, there's also high amounts of fishing gear found. And then this graph is just kind of another way of showing that same data. So this paper, they made a better graph than I did using the same data, but it pretty much shows that like high amounts of lobster fishing happens right here on the northwest side of Santa Rosa, and that's also where we found the highest number of lost fishing items. So this graph on the right, this is the number of items of lost fishing gear found per transect. And so the blue is Santa Rosa Island, and as you can see, most of it's found on Santa Rosa Island. So it just kind of shows that it's related to fishing efforts. And this is just to kind of tie it all together. So in total, from the fall of 2016 to the summer of 2019, we removed and counted over 25,000 individual items of trash and recorded it into this crazy database. And so just some like high level trends, I guess. So the highest overall debris densities were found on Santa Rosa Island. This is also where there was the lowest densities of microplastics, but I kind of assumed that there would be high densities of microplastics there as well. This is where the most lost fishing gear is found. And based on these factors, I think this side of the island should be prioritized in removal efforts. And then on the west end of Santa Cruz, it's hard to, you can't really say like for the whole island because it's a giant island and we only did these 3 sites on the west end, but these sites had the highest number of small plastic items, so very low weight densities, high item densities, and then really high densities of microplastics. And I think that's because of just these like micro current and circulation patterns that happen here. Not a lot of like direct wave action, so I don't think there's a lot of like large debris items getting pushed into here, but it's mostly like the little small pieces of styrofoam, and that means that also microplastics, since they're so small, are accumulating there and ending up in the sediment as well. And then in terms of weight, so also in that time period, we ended up hiking out over 6,000 pounds of trash. 8% of that debris from the island is made up of fishing gear, so it's kind of a big component of the weight. 85% of it is plastic, and then 7% was other categories. On Santa Rosa Island, like I mentioned earlier, I think the most of it accumulates here because of prevailing winds and current patterns. It's also kind of close to Point Conception. A lot of stuff can kind of just funnel right off there and catch in this zone. 10% of the debris on Rosa is fishing gear, 83% is plastic. And then out of all of that 6,000 pounds plus, 85% of that was from Santa Rosa itself. So that's why I think it should be kind of prioritized in removal efforts moving forward. And then on Santa Cruz Island, 2% of that was fishing gear. Oh, this is just the west end, so I don't like to say the whole island. But 91% of the debris on these 3 sites was plastic, those little foam pieces basically, and straws, just little tiny pieces of plastic. And 10% of that total weight of the 6,000 pounds was just from these 3 sites. And so with that, I just kind of wanted to maybe like try to tie it all together and talk about briefly just the importance of monitoring marine debris locally. So our results just show a tiny piece of the puzzle. There's a lot of value in long-term data sets, and this is the beginning of one that's still ongoing. So this work's still ongoing. They were able to complete surveys during COVID, which is awesome, and then they just got funded by the NOAA Marine Debris Program, again, to continue this work for a couple more years, which is awesome. But yeah, uninhabited islands are kind of the ideal place to monitor marine debris, especially islands that are so close to such a large, metropolitan area. Island beaches can kind of act as like a canary in a coal mine for the health of the surrounding ocean. So since these islands are uninhabited, there's no one, it's not like you're going to the beach and directly depositing, debris on the beach. The debris that's found there has washed up. It's come from a bunch of different sources. And so it's kind of an interesting way to kind of monitor the health of the surrounding ocean and just see, you can notice a lot of things through monitoring. So for example, you can notice global events. I'm really curious, and since it's COVID times, like, are we seeing more masks on the island, like those disposable masks? Are we seeing more single-use plastics? Since single-use plastics are being pushed pretty hard right now with COVID and everything, I'm wondering, is there going to be an uptick in those in the data, especially on the islands? And then you can also kind of assess the effectiveness of different policies that are put into place. So for example, like the straw ban, the bag ban, the future bans that you guys are talking about that hopefully get passed. We can, if we monitor these beaches where no one really, goes often, we can see if those policies are effective by noticing, less straws, for example. And then you can also notice changes in consumer culture, which is kind of, to me, a combination of both global events and policy effectiveness and just awareness of the issue as a whole. So as like water bottles, single-use water bottles start to become less popular, like do we see, less of those on the beach as well? So like as awareness increases about this issue, do we see less single-use items? So just things like that are interesting, and we have a lot of information that can be used and applied to make these decisions through monitoring programs like this one. And with that, I just want to say thank you for having me. If you are interested in current updates for the project, you can contact Joe Forrest. He's the current project manager for the research station for this marine debris program, or you can follow this Instagram where we post fun pictures of marine debris that we find. And I think that's it.
Awesome. That's great, Michaela. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
I think we have a manageable crowd here tonight. So if anybody has any questions for Michaela, feel free to unmute yourself and let them rip.
I have a question. Thank you so much for this presentation, Michaela. We really, obviously, this is a problem and a challenge that's near and dear to the chapter's hearts. And so to tie it all in and to show how important the work is that you're doing, and that the grant funding is being continued, which, obviously that's critical. But I did want to ask, is Joseph now you said that there were volunteers. Is it possible to volunteer like through Joseph or through on the website or something?
Yeah, so there used to be volunteers. I'm not sure with COVID anymore. The research station's closed, so I don't think they're just kind of doing it in-house. But you can contact him for post-COVID world volunteer opportunities.
Okay, I didn't write it down.
I can put it,
Is there a way to throw that thing back up or write or send like,
I'll put it in the chat.
okay, thank you. Perfect. Let me go get a pen. I'm pretty old school, so I have no idea if I can do something with it later, but I'll write it down right now. It's pretty exciting to think that. I know, Cassie, you've done this before, haven't you?
I was never lucky enough to do any on the island, but I did do the ones on the mainland on Oxnard, and then I went out with the NOAA Marine Debris Program to a different cove on the north end of Santa Cruz. And that was, we literally had to like kayak to the beach to get to it because there was no pier or anything. I'm totally blanking on the beach name right now, which is embarrassing.
I think it's Chinese.
Yeah, I think so. It was really cool, but also horrifying because it was so uninhabited. Yet we found so much stuff. But I was fascinated, and being a ESRM major when you were doing all this was just incredible. So really, really hope that we can get more people to do this kind of work. But I was curious. You'd mentioned that you guys had 1980s data. What was the biggest difference in the data that you found from the 1980s to now? I mean, I would immediately assume like there wasn't as many Starbucks cups out there, but what did you find that was most interesting?
Yeah, so the data is a little different. It's not as like detailed, I guess. I got a little crazy with mine, but so one main thing was the increase in fishing gear that's found. So I think there's like 25% more fishing gear is found now than was present in the 80s. And then I looked at like lobster fishing landings since the 80s, and there's also like the same kind of uptick in lobster catch that's being caught in this area. So it's related to, I think, lobster fishing pressure is one thing. But so yeah, there's just one relationship that I noticed.
It's pretty gnarly. Are they going to expand the program? Because I know you mentioned they got a couple more years of funding. Are they going to do the same sites, or maybe go onto other parts of the island, or
Yeah, I think they're gonna keep doing the same sites and just keep that database going, but there are other efforts done. So the Marine Sanctuary is working with the National Marine Sanctuary Foundation to do this like Clean Seas Channel Islands project. And then I know Santa Barbara Channel Keeper is also kind of getting involved in monitoring efforts. So hopefully it's in the works, like hopefully they're gonna have some kind of more cohesive monitoring program, so they can maybe other groups could tackle other sites, and we can get more information that way.
Awesome. Thanks for your presentation. That was awesome.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And thank you so much, Michaela. I think it really just reiterates the importance of beach cleanups before it gets out into the ocean and becomes this overwhelming issue. And we always are so thankful for the Channel Islands right off of our coast, and it's terrible that you're seeing these fishing gear washing up there. So thank you for informing us about the various debris items and microplastics on the islands. That was awesome of you to share all of your incredible research.
Thanks.
Hey, Michaela, I have a question for you. Those maps were really interesting where it showed the different amounts of debris at the different locations. Were you able to figure out anything why some were more than others? Was the beach angled a specific way? Was there a different type of cove, anything like that you could determine?
Yeah, the more I tried to figure that out, the more I realized I don't know, which is kind of frustrating, but I think that's part of just research. I think that the sites on Santa Rosa have more debris just because of wind and current patterns. I tried to map that once, and it was a little over my head in terms of dealing with oceanographic modeling data and whatnot, so I kind of didn't focus on that too much. But I think it definitely has to do with just seasonal current patterns and wind and just beach aspects. So northwest facing beaches that get that prevailing wind and current, they tend to get a lot of the bigger items versus some of the west facing beaches, or some that are just more sheltered, I guess. They don't have that direct impact. There's these micro little currents, and that's when all the smaller pieces tend to accumulate more. So I haven't found a way to like prove that through like stats and whatnot yet, but that's just my assumption.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, that was a question that I was just going to bring up, is if you thought that there would be an opportunity to kind of use circulation models coupled with maybe local bathymetry data to kind of map out areas where you might have highest candidate targets of plastic accumulation, and you know, maybe in some way kind of come up with oceanographic modeling correlations to do that.
Yeah, my original grad thesis was to like develop a model for like detecting hotspots on marine debris based on this like shoreline data, and then coupling that with like oceanographic data. But we didn't have enough sites spread out. So if we had some sites like on the south side, for example, it would be a little bit easier, I think, to like ground truth that model. But since we don't really have that data, it's hard to like to say. But yeah, ideally, something I'd really like to do is try to create, like, based on these specific factors and these known amounts of accumulation, like where's debris most likely to accumulate, and like where can we kind of target removal efforts based on that. So work in progress.
Nice. It's always more work to be done.
Yeah.
I'm personally curious, do you utilize GIS, or is that what the software that you would be using, as like an Esri software to model the hotspot analysis?
Yeah, I try to use GIS and R to do that. Most of these maps are made in GIS, but yeah, I started getting into it with R, and then it just got really crazy, so I switched gears a little bit, but hopefully that can happen at some point.
Or maybe combine it with like MIT GCM or something like that to create some circulation models.
Yeah, this is when I need like an oceanographer to help me out.
What do you think is the biggest kind of point of introduction of all of that debris, aside from like the fishing gear, which is obvious?
Yeah, that's a good question. And again, like the more that I studied this and like try to figure that out, the more I was like, I don't really know. Like it's coming from everywhere, especially on these like super far beaches on like the West End and stuff. It's coming from like, you know, sometimes across the Pacific. So it's literally everywhere. I just think like I focus on fishing gear because I think in terms of the debris sources, it's like low hanging fruit, and it's local and we know where it's coming from. But other than that, I have no idea where the most of it comes from, unfortunately.
Nice.
Thanks, Jackie.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Michaela this evening?
No, but thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's fun.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time this evening, and we look forward to being able to add your presentation to our online YouTube library of information. We're hoping that that'll be a new resource for students in the COVID era to tune into to learn more about ongoing research. So thank you.
Cool.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you very much. We actually ended up a
Thank
little
you,
early,
everyone.
so if anybody has any general comments, Laura, do you have anything you'd like to add, or we can kind of open it up for just a general discussion for 5 or 10 minutes if people have anything they'd like to talk about.
Well, I find that we were talking yesterday about this data and how important it is, and how I wish that there was some way to affect policy now that would help to prevent the trash debris to get to a point where we're ahead of the problem. And the EPS ban is a great start for the city of Ventura, a great start. So it's reducing the usage, it's educating people not to cause trash pollution in the first place. So it's not reducing the consumption, it's going to help the landfills, it's going to help lessen the amount of debris that Michaela has to study to, it's just really, it's up to all of us to really get ahead of the problem. And so if we just take it upon ourselves to use less single-use anything, reusable when possible, repurposing when possible, this is all on us really to get ahead of it, because we're going to be fought every single step of the way from big business not wanting to lose their profits. So it's going to have to come from us.
Yeah,
I agree. I also, Michaela, I have one more question for you, which you may not be able to answer, but I'm gonna throw it out there anyway. Did you guys ever discuss what you thought about the debris that was right off of the coast? Because what Laura and I have been kind of interested in is picking up an adopt a dive site thing. And I've always wondered, on the beaches that have a high accumulation of macroplastics, is it just as bad right off the coast in the water? And I don't know if you guys ever looked into that or if you had any research findings on it.
You mean like doing like maybe like subtidal surveys instead of just shoreline?
Yeah, and maybe even a little deeper. I'm thinking like maybe like anywhere from 30 to 60 feet underwater, like right off the coast. If all the trash that was all the big macroplastics, if they weren't taken off the beach prior, did they just get washed offshore right off the coast?
I've thought about that. There's some groups that do like diving. I think I forgot their name, but they do some like underwater cleanups on the islands, not at the same sites that we survey. So I'm not sure like what the relationship is, but I feel like the beaches that we have where we get a lot of like the big items, they also have like the most wave action. So it's just waves like depositing debris on there and then kind of ripping it off later. So yeah, I don't know, like it gets so complicated, like how it moves around, and yeah, like the more you think about it, the less you're like, I don't know.
Debbie had a question. Did you know all single-use coffee cups are not recyclable because they're lined with plastic?
Yeah.
It wasn't a question. It was just, I didn't know if people knew that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
I'm gonna boycott Starbucks.
Paul had a theory that there might not be a lot of trash in the ocean, on the ocean floor, because we have historically sandy bottoms here. And I can't say that without laughing, because doesn't that sound funny? Sandy bottoms. I don't know. It just does. So I'm sorry. But anyway, that's probably part of it. I'm probably gonna have to mute myself in a second. But anyway.
So glad this is recorded too.
Megan's probably like mortified right now. Anyway, somebody else start talking quickly.
So I guess, Michaela, another question. I know, have you done anything related to, I mean, we were talking about underwater. How about surface? I mean, I know that Island Packers picks up balloons when they see them out on their boats and such. Do you have any either anecdotal or, hard data on surface marine debris also?
I do not. I just did, just the shoreline sandy beach stuff. I think there's some groups that do like plankton trawls in the channel, and I think Sand River Channel Keeper might, but I'm not sure. And they can look at like microplastics within the water column found that way. I know Island Packers, Jackie over here is an Island Packers employee, by the way, just putting her on blast. But they pick up balloons all the time. I think it'd be a really cool project to like maybe take like a data point every time they find a balloon and then see, but then they run the same run back and forth. So it's not like a clear picture of the channel, but it would be kind of interesting to see, just to get kind of like more of an idea of where balloons wind up. But yeah, I just pretty much focus on shoreline stuff.
Cool.
Jackie,
Jackie, you want to touch on that a little bit? What do you see out there on the boat?
Yeah, we always stop for balloons because it's an easy one to prevent from it ending up in the water is, balloons blow. So it's just educating people on the effects of balloons, and, they're not like super great party decorations. And so, yeah, it's just like a good educational opportunity for people because they're not really essential to any part of our life, really. And so when we find them, we always like to educate everybody on that. And it's just about every time we're headed out to the island, it's at least one that we pick up. So, and some other days it's, you know, multiple different ones. And after like Valentine's Day, Mother's Day, Father's Day, we always see all kinds of those types of balloons out there. So
Interesting.
yeah.
You guys stoked when I was on a trip and you guys stopped and picked one up. I was impressed.
Yeah.
Good stewards of the ocean. Cool. Any other comments or questions out there?
Yeah, maybe one other. I have a colleague at work who's involved in climate change, and we were talking. I was about to say the other day, but it's been months since I've been in the office, so it was pre-pandemic, and we were talking about the issue of plastics in the environment, and his comment was, well, while I'm interested in that, he said, I just see climate change as a bigger threat. He didn't think that plastics in the environment was as big of a threat. But my initial reaction was, yuck, I think it's a huge
Greg,
threat. Can you guys still hear me? Okay, all right. Anyway, yeah, so I just on a personal level, I think it's a huge threat. Could you maybe just say a little bit more about some of the negative environmental impacts of plastics in the environment that might not be so obvious to the layman? So that if somebody says, well, it's not as big a problem as climate change, we might have an answer for that.
Totally. I think it's funny you brought that up because my job now, I work in like climate change, sea level rise issues. So I've kind of switched gears a little bit. And so I think about that question a lot. I feel like climate change is obviously a really important issue, but I think because with both issues, they're kind of new in terms of like, we don't really know the eventual human impacts that these things are going to have on us. So for example, like plastics was just invented in like the 50s or so. They weren't really widespread until it hasn't been that long. And so just the amount of like, we're still catching up to what we know, like what the damages of plastics could do. We don't know the long-term health effects that like the chemicals that plastics have, the chemical additives, the plasticizers they put into these plastics. We don't understand how those are going to interact with the environment and eventually impact human health yet, because we're like rapidly catching up to this issue, and we're like just realizing like, whoa, we've created a really big problem for ourselves. And so I think it's easier to focus on climate change because well, it is also a big deal, but I think they're just related. If you think about it too, they're both related to the fossil fuel industry. So climate change is driven by increased use of fossil fuels. Plastics are made of oil. Both of these, really big environmental problems are from our, in my opinion, over dependence on, the current energy system and how it's not working for us. So I think if you just think about sustainability as a whole, both of those two issues are related, and we just don't know the long-term impacts yet. And that's why it's easier to focus on climate change. But then also like marine debris is a little bit easier to get people to care about because there's like, you can see it, like you can show those photos of, birds with plastic in their guts. So, and you can't, so yeah, that was kind of a rambling answer, but I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, no, those are some very good points, because you could argue that they're flip sides of the same coin. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you.
Awesome. Anything else before we wrap it up? Well, thank you very much again, Michaela. We will pop this on our YouTube channel so we can reach a wider audience. We appreciate you joining us tonight and everybody for tuning in. Thank you, Danielle, for co-hosting tonight. You did an awesome job. Thank you, Laura and Cassie, and everybody else for all that you do. We'll get through this. Everybody stay well out there. Good to see you. Take care.
Good night, everyone.